Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. You're muted, Prabhuji. We can't hear.
Thank you, Mother. Okay. So we're reading Charitamrita, Adi Lila, chapter 7. We're going to start with text 111. Okay. If you see me putting my glasses on and off, it's only because I had my operation for cataract and now my readings have changed. So today I got my new prescription. It'll be 2 weeks before I get my new glasses. So I'm just using my old one, which are very uncomfortable. But anyway, we'll try. Okay. ब्रह्म शब्द मुख्य अर्थ है कहे भगवान चिदैश्वर्य परिपूर्ण अनुरुद्ध समान. Translation. According to direct understanding, can everybody please mute yourselves? Thank you.
You are on mute, Prabhuji. We can't hear you.
Hold on.
Now it's okay.
Okay. Translation. According to direct understanding, the absolute truth is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who has all spiritual opulences. No one can be equal to or greater than him. If somebody read the purport, I will explain this.
I can read, Prabhuji.
Okay, but everybody needs to be on mute because I'm still hearing some background chanting going on.
I will start, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Babu.
This statement by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam. Vadanti tat tattva vidata tattvam yaj jnanam advayam brahmete paramatmete bhagwan iti shabdate. Learned transcendentals who know the absolute truth call this non-dual substance Brahman, Paramatma or Bhagwan. The absolute truth is ultimately understood as a Bhagwan, partially understood as a Paramatma, and vaguely understood as the impersonal Brahman. Bhagwan or the Supreme Personality Godhead is opulent in all excellence. No one can be equal to or greater than him. This is also confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 7.7, where the Lord says, Mata parataram anyat kinchita asti dhananjaya. O conqueror of the wealth, Arjuna, there is no truth superior to me. There are many other verses which prove that the absolute truth in the ultimate sense is understood to be the Supreme Personality Godhead, Krishna. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Babu. So here the point being made is that the absolute truth is actually the personality of Godhead. Personality implies person. A light does not have personality. Energy does not have personality. A person has personality. So it's not just an ordinary person, it's a supreme person. Supreme means lots of opulences, not exceeded by anybody else, not equaled or exceeded by anyone. And it refers to here about 6 opulences of the Lord. So it's in Vishnu Purana, it says, Ashwarasya samagrasya, virya yashashya, jnano vairagyoscha, shadguna, bhav, itiranam, which means that God has 6 opulences of most wealth, strongest, most famous, most beautiful, most knowledgeable, and most renounced. Only Supreme Personality of Godhead has all those 6 opulences at the same time and to the max. Nobody can exceed those. Every once in a while, we meet somebody in the material world who may be very, very beautiful, but then doesn't necessarily have money or fame or jnana or vairagya. And you can take any of these examples, but God, the Supreme God, has all those 6 qualities at the same time. So that's one reason why he's called Supreme. And then it goes on to explain by quoting Srimad Bhagavatam 1 to 11 that those who know the truth, so learned transcendentalists, they know what's absolute truth, and that it comes with three features. Those who have very vague understanding of the absolute truth, they call it Brahman effulgence, and that's their extent of understanding. Those who have slightly more or partial understanding of the absolute truth, they go to the Paramatma feature, all pervading Paramatma feature. But those who have the best understanding and complete understanding, they understand that Bhagavan feature is actually a person who has the qualities of Paramatma as well as Brahman effulgence. So in Bhagavan feature, you have all three features. In Paramatma feature, you have only two features. In Brahman feature, you have only one feature. So it says vague, partial, or complete understanding of that. And then Prabhupada is quoting different verses, especially the one in 7.7. It says, Matta Partaram Nanyat Kanchitas Dhanaja. There's nothing, no truth higher than me. In another place, 10th chapter, he says, I'm Sarvasya Prabhu, Matta Sarvam Prabhatate. I'm the master of everyone. In 529, he says the same thing. Bhogashwar Prasakta, sorry. How does it go?
Bhoktaram yagna
Yes,
tapasam.
Bhoktaram Jagatapasam. Bhoktaram Jagatapasam, Sarvlok Maheshwaram. So he's saying again, I'm Supreme Controller. Anyway, so many different verses in Bhagavad Gita and other scriptures also. Krishna has said, and those who know have said, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and his personality, a person, not a light, not just Paramatma. Okay. Let's move on to the next one. 112. Tahar vibhuti deha, sab chid akar, chid vibhuti achadi, tare kahe nirakar. Translation. Everything about the Supreme Personality of Godhead is spiritual, including his body, opulence, and paraphernalia. Mayavad philosophy, however, covering his spiritual opulence, advocates the theory of impersonalism. So impersonalism basically means no person, which means no personal features. And on the other hand, the verse is saying that Supreme Personality of God is spiritual, not just him. His body is spiritual, his opulences are spiritual, and all the paraphernalia he uses. So his crown, his clothes, his house, his sacred thread, everything is spiritual, not material. So let's read the purport and understand this better. Somebody wants to start, please? First paragraph.
Can I try, Prabhuji?
Please go ahead.
Okay. Purport. It is stated in the Brahm Samhita, Ishwar Param Krishna Satyat Ananda Vigraha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, has a spiritual body which is full of knowledge, eternity, and bliss. In this material world, everyone's body is just the opposite, temporary, full of ignorance and full of misery. Therefore, when the Supreme Personality of Godhead is sometimes described as Nirakar, there is to indicate that he doesn't have a material body like us.
Thank you, Prabhu. So here, Prabhupada is quoting from Brahma Samhita, very, very famous verse, the first verse of the 5th chapter. Ishvara Paramakrishna Satchidananda Vigraha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has a spiritual body, which is Sat Chit Anand. Sat means eternal, Chit means full of knowledge, and Anand means full of bliss. And it's a Vigraha. So Vigraha means it's a body. Vigraha does not mean anything that there's no body. It means there's a body. It means there's a form. It means there's a shape. So it's a Vigraha, but consisting of the spiritual knowledge, spiritual eternity. Well, eternity is always spiritual anyway, and a spiritual bliss. And that is his body. That's the spiritual body he has. Whereas we, in the material world, instead of being eternal, have temporary body. Instead of having all the knowledge, we are full of ignorance. Instead of having full of bliss, we are full of misery. It's totally opposite. So basically, in many places you will hear Krishna being referred to as Nirakar. Nirakar literally means no form. But here the point being made is he does not have a material form. He does not have a material body. Why? Because he's not temporary, he is eternal. His body, I mean. His body is not full of ignorance, it's full of knowledge. His body is not full of misery, it's full of bliss. Okay? Let's go to the next one.
Can I continue, Prabhuji?
Let somebody just do it.
Okay, sure.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I can read Prabhu.
Good, Mataji.
Mayavadi philosophers do not know how it is that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is formless. The Supreme Lord does not have a form like ours, but has a spiritual form. Not knowing this, Mayavadi philosophers simply advocate the one-sided view that the Supreme Godhead or Brahman is formless, Nirakar. In this connection, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur offers many quotes from the Vedic literature. If one accepts the real or direct meaning of these Vedic statements, one can understand that the Supreme Personality of Godhead has a spiritual body, Sachidananda Vigraha.
Right.
Hare
Thank you, Mataji. So once again, Nirakar does not mean no form. It just means no material form. Again, in the previous paragraph mentioned, material means temporary, full of miseries, and full of ignorance. So his body is the opposite. That's why it's spiritual. So it's not a material form, but a spiritual form. So Nirakar means no material form. Okay, and then the next paragraph talks about some of the quotes that Bhaktivinoda Thakur has offered. Somebody wants to read the next paragraph?
Can read, Prabhuji.
Go ahead, please.
In the Aranyaka Upanishad 5.1.1, it is said, Purnam Ada Purnamidam Purnat Purnam Udachyate. This indicates that the body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is spiritual, for even though he expands in many ways, he remains the same. In the Bhagavad Gita 10.8, the Lord says, Aham Sarvasya Prabho Matta Sarvam Pravartate. I am the origin of all. Everything emanates from me. Mayavadi philosophers materialistically think that if the Supreme Truth expands himself in everything, he must lose his original form. Thus, they think that there cannot be any form other than the expansive gigantic body of the Lord. But the Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad confirms, Purnam idam purnat purnam udachyate. Although he expands in many ways, he keeps his original personality. His original spiritual body remains as it is. Similarly, elsewhere it is stated, Vichitra Shakti Purusha Purana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the original person, Purusha, has multifarious energies. And the Sveteshwara Upanishad declares, Sa Viksha Kal Akriti Bhi Paronyo Yasmat Prapancha Parivartate Yam Dharmavaham Papanudam Bhagesham. He is the origin of the material creation, and it is due to him only that everything changes. He is the protector of religion and annihilator of all sinful activities. He is the master of all opulences. Sudeshwar Upanishad 6.6. Vedham etam purusham mahattam aditya varnam tamsa prasaste. Now I understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead to be the greatest of the great. He is effulgent like the sun and is beyond this material world. Sudeshwar Upanishad 3.8. Patitam patinam paramam parastad. He is the master of all masters, the superior of all superiors. Suteshwar Upanishad 6.7. Mahan Prabhur Vai Purushaha. He is the supreme master and the supreme person. Suteshwar Upanishad 3.12. Parashaya Sakti Vividhaiva Shruyate. We can understand his opulences in different ways. Suteshwar Upanishad 6.8. Similarly, in the Rig Veda, it is stated that Vishnu Paramam Padam Sada Pashyanti Surya. Vishnu the Supreme, and those who are actually learned think only of his lotus feet. In the Prashna Upanishad 6.3, it is said, Sa Iksham Chakre. He glanced over the material creation. In the Aitareya Upanishad 1.1.1 and 2, it is said, Sa Akshita. He glanced over the material creation. And Sa Imal Lokan Ashajat. He created this entire material world.
Thank you. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of quotes given, which are really self-explanatory, but basically making the point that Krishna is a Supreme Personality of Godhead and that he has an original form. That's one point. Second point is because his body is spiritual, when he expands into different forms, his own form is not affected. It's not like the material math where 1 minus 1 equals 0 or 3 minus 1 equals 2. Something less. If you take something out, something less is left. Srila Prabhupada used to give the example of a gold brick. Take a little piece out, make an earring. You have an earring, but a little bit smaller brick. If you keep making earrings out of the brick, very soon you will not have a brick. But that's because it's material. On the other hand, Krishna has completed himself. When he takes something out, like expands, what expands into is complete. Purname udachite, Purnat Purname udachite, right? So whatever is coming out from the complete is also complete, and what's left is also complete. That's because it's spiritual body, and that is the spiritual mind. So, and again, many quotes from different Upanishads, Shvetashvara Upanishad in particular, and Brahmanarak Upanishad, another one. Basically, there's the master, or the master is the supreme, and he's complete in every sense. What comes out of him is also complete. Okay. Next paragraph. Who wants to read the next paragraph?
May I read, Prabhuji?
Please go ahead. Yeah.
Thus, many verses can be quoted from the Upanishads and Vedas which prove that the Supreme Godhead is not impersonal. In the Katha Upanishad 2.2.13, it is also said, Nityo Nityanam Chetananam Eko Bahunam Yo Vidadati Kaman. He is the Supreme Eternally Conscious Person who maintains all other living entities. From all these Vedic references, one can understand that the absolute truth is a person and that no one can equal or excel him. Although there are many foolish Mayavadi philosophers who think that they are even greater than Krishna, Krishna is asamarudhva. No one is equal to or above him.
Yeah.
Should I continue?
Just 1 minute, Mataji.
Yeah.
So again, different quotes are coming out. This one is very famous and worth memorizing. Katha Upanishad 2.1.3. Anityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitananam Eko Bahunam Yo Vididhati Kama. So we living entities, you and I, we are all conscious living entities. But among us, Krishna is the most conscious, eternally conscious person. And not just an ordinary person, but he maintains all of us by providing whatever various desires we have. Your vididhati kaman, whatever desires we have, different kinds of desires, he provides for them. He satisfies them. So therefore, he's saying that there's no one who can equal or excel Krishna. Asamordhu means, asam is not equal, urdhu means higher. So asama and adhorva, which basically means not equal, not higher. So nobody can be equal to or higher than Krishna. Okay. Next paragraph, please. Somebody. It's only one line. Go ahead.
Okay. As stated in the Shvetashvatara Upanishad 3.19, Apani Pado Javano Grahita, this verse describes the absolute truth as having no legs or hands. Although this is an impersonal description, it does not mean that the absolute personality of Godhead has no form. He has a spiritual form that is distinct from the forms of matter. In this verse, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu clarifies this distinction.
Yeah, thank you. So those of you who have read Ishopanishad, there it says the absolute truth has no legs but can run faster than mine, has no eyes but can see very far, and so on and so forth. Different. So basically saying the absolute truth has all the body parts that you and I have. The only difference is that they are spiritual, ours are material. Therefore, we have the defects. He does not have the defects in his body. He can do everything that we cannot even conceive of doing. Again, because he's a spiritual, we're not. Okay, any questions? Okay, so we go to 113. चिदानंद तेहो तार स्थान परिवार, तारे कहे प्राकृत सत्वेर विकार. Translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is full of spiritual potencies. Therefore, his body, name, fame, and entourage are all spiritual. The Mayavadi philosopher, due to ignorance, says that these are all merely transformations of material mode of goodness. So clearly, Mayavadis just don't understand that Krishna is actually spiritual. He is spiritual, his body is spiritual, his name is spiritual, his fame is spiritual, his entourage is spiritual, everything about him is spiritual. There's no question of it. But Mayavadi said, no, no, no. That's all transformation of material mode of goodness. So at least they admit that the absolute truth has goodness, but material, this cannot bring their mind around the fact that there's nothing material about the absolute truth. It's all spiritual. So let's read the purport for further discussion. Okay.
I can read, Prabhu.
Please go ahead.
In the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, the Supreme Personality of Godhead has classified his energies into two distinct divisions, namely Prakrta and Aprakrta, or Paraprakriti and Aparaprakriti. In the Vishnu Puran, the same distinction is made. The Mayavadi philosophers cannot understand these two prakritis or natures, material and spiritual, but one who is actually intelligent can understand them. Considering the many varieties and activities in material nature, why should the Mayavadi philosophers deny the spiritual varieties of the spiritual world? The Bhagavatam 10.232 says, Ye anye ravindaksha vimukta maninas tvayasta bhavad avishuddha buddhaya. The intelligence of those who think themselves liberated but have no information of the spiritual world is not yet clear. In this verse, the term Avishuddha Buddhaya refers to unclean intelligence. Due to unclean intelligence or a poor fund of knowledge, the Mayavadi philosophers cannot understand the distinction between material and spiritual varieties. Therefore, they cannot even think of spiritual varieties because they take it for granted that all variety is material.
Yeah, thank you. So it is often said that we see the world through our own lenses. And we all have different lenses. And it reminds me of a story. There was an old couple. They used to have breakfast together every morning. They sit at their dining table and enjoy the breakfast in the morning. And their neighbor just behind them had a clothes lining in the backyard. They used to hang their clothes on that lining, on that line, I should say. And the old man used to complain to his wife, our neighbors are so dirty. Look at the clothes. They're so dirty. Why don't they actually wash them properly? So dirty. Every day it was same routine. Complain about how dirty the neighbors' clothes were as they were being hung to dry. Then one day they sat down and the old man said, whoa, look at that. It looks like our neighbor heard my complaint. And today they cleaned their clothes. Look how clean they are. And the wife smiled and she said, dear, I cleaned the window today. So when we're looking at the world through a dirty window, the world looks dirty. So sometimes what happens is that because of that, we get fixed in our ideas and we cannot see the alternative as being correct. And that's the problem with Mayavadis. They're so fixed on everything being material, despite all the proof they see, they cannot accept it. For example, an example is given here that there are many varieties and activities in the material nature. Yet, Mayavadi philosopher cannot fathom the thought that therefore there must be spiritual varieties in the spiritual world. They just cannot understand that. So everything is material. So therefore, it must be some kind of a transformation of something material. So Prabhupada is saying that therefore the intelligence is unclean. It's unclean like the window that I give the example of. unclean window, unclean intelligence. Everything looks unclean. They cannot see the truth because they're seeing again through a faulty lens. They have that everything is material. Okay, next paragraph.
Hare Krishna. Can I read, Prabhu?
Please go ahead. Oh.
Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore explains in this verse that Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or the Absolute Truth, has a spiritual body that is distinct from material bodies, and thus his name, abode, entourage, and qualities are all spiritual. The material mode of goodness has nothing to do with spiritual varieties. Mayavadi philosophers, however, cannot clearly understand spiritual varieties. Therefore, they imagine a negation of the material world to be the spiritual world. The material qualities of goodness, passion, and ignorance cannot act in the spiritual world, which is therefore called nirguna, as clearly indicated in the Bhagavad Gita. Triguna Vishaya Veda Nistray Gunayo Bhavarjuna. The material world is manifestation of the three modes of material nature, but one has to become free from these modes to come to the spiritual world, where their influence is completely absent. Now, Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will disassociate Lord Shiva from Mayavada philosophy in the following verse. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you. So once again, the point is being made. There's nothing material in the spiritual world. Even the material mode of goodness is not there because it's still material. And as I was giving my example, the Mayavadis simply refuse to take their lens of everything being material off their eyes so they can see the reality. So, it's like they say, if you put the rose-colored glasses on, then everything looks rosy. It may or may not be. Same thing there. They got faulty lenses, and so therefore everything looks material. And then they interpret the word nirgun that's used to describe the absolute truth in many scriptures. Look, the scripture is saying that. But no, nirgun means no material quality. Just like nirakar means no material form. Nirgun means no material qualities. But the spiritual qualities are there. And that's simply because any material qualities cannot enter the spiritual world. Anything material cannot enter the spiritual world. Therefore, one is spiritual world and one is material world. And that's a very clear distinction. So now Lord Chaitanya is going to explain why a pure devotee like Lord Shiva, Vaishnava Nam Yatha Shambhu, it is said about him in Bhagavatam, that he is the topmost devotee of the Lord. So why would the topmost devotee of the Lord propagate a philosophy that denies the personal feature of the Lord? So we're going to read that next. Okay. So 114. Lord Chaitanya talking now. Tar dosh nahite ho agyakari das. Ar jai shunetar hoy sarvanash. Shankaracharya, who is an incarnation of Lord Shiva, is faultless. This is Lord Chaitanya saying. Who is Lord Chaitanya? The Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. So he's saying Shankaracharya, who is an incarnation of Lord Shiva, is faultless because he's a servant carrying out the orders of the Lord. He's simply doing what his Lord, his master told him to do. But those who follow his Mayavadi philosophy are doomed. So the one who wrote it is still okay. Those who follow it are doomed. How? They will lose all their advancement in spiritual knowledge. I mean, they're the biggest losers in the world. They work very hard to gain that knowledge and they're losing because of the philosophy they are following. So let's see the purport to understand this point better. Any volunteers?
I will read, Prabhuji.
Please go ahead.
Mayavadi philosophers are very proud of exhibiting their Vedanta knowledge through grammatical jugglery, but Lord Shri Krishna in Bhagavad Gita certifies. I'm reading it right?
Go ahead.
Yes.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay,
Go ahead.
okay. But Lord Shri Krishna in Bhagavad Gita certifies that they are Maya Paharta Jananah, bereft of real knowledge due to Maya. Maya has two potencies with which to execute her two functions: Prakshipikatmika Shakti, the power to throw the living entity in the ocean of material existence, and Avranatmika Shakti, the power to cover the knowledge living entity. The function of the Avaranatmika Shakti is explained in Bhagavad Gita by the word Maya Parhata Jnana.
Okay, thank you. So the Mayavadis are very good at grammatical jugglery. And what that means is that they get you entangled in the words and the rules of grammars and all those kind of things. They forget the real purpose of this thing. And they confuse you. They say, okay, therefore what I'm telling you is right. But very interestingly, in chapter 7, text 15, Krishna uses the term Maya Aprahata Jnana. Those whose jnana, knowledge, has been aprahata, stolen by Maya. Those fools whose knowledge has been stolen by Maya, therefore they have become bereft of real knowledge. They are the ones who talk like the Mayavadis do. And then goes on to explain Maya, the external potency of the Lord, actually has two potencies. So the potency called Maya has two sub-potencies, which allow her to do her two functions. What are the two functions? So one is to turn the person away from Krishna and throw them into the ocean of material existence. So Prakshep Atmika. Prakshep means rocket. Atma means the one who has the potency of doing that. So Prakshep Atmika means the one who has the potency of throwing a person away. That Shakti is one sub-potency of Maya. So that potency of Maya turns a person away from Krishna and throws them into the ocean of material existence. The second potency is called Avarana Atmika. Avarana means to hide or to cover. So Avarana Atmika means that part that's able to cover something. So Avarana Atmika Shakti means that potency that's covering something. What is that? It's covering the real knowledge of the living entity. So what is the knowledge of a living entity? That I am part and parcel of Krishna, that I am eternal servant of Krishna. My relationship with Krishna is that servant and master, and Krishna is my master. That's the knowledge, and it covers that. As a result, the living entity starts to think, I am the master, Krishna is my order supplier. And as a result of these two sub-potencies of Maya, a person then remains in the material existence forever and ever and ever. Okay. All right. Next paragraph. Who wants to read that?
Raghuji, before we move ahead,
Sure.
can you give more clarity of the difference between the two energies? Though I know you have covered it before, because the conclusion of both the energies is both same almost.
Well, the conclusion is same, but the two functions are different. One is turning you away from Krishna and throwing you away from Krishna. Other is covering your knowledge, who you are, who Krishna is, and what is your relationship with Krishna. So there's no overlap really in that sense.
So if Krishna covers our identity from him, let's say
Not
somebody
Krishna, the Maya Shakti.
Maya Shakti, yes, sorry.
Yes, correct. And
So
that's why people have forgotten who Krishna is. People have forgotten that who they are. They think they are this body.
so aren't those the same people who are again and again, coming into the ocean of birth and death and thrown into the ocean of material existence?
Yeah,
Isn't
that's
it?
what he's saying. That's exactly what he's saying.
But that is Prakshepikatmika.
No. So one is the act of covering your knowledge. The other is having covered your knowledge, throwing you into the material ocean. So they're connected, yes, but they're not same. It's like, for example, your daughter one day comes and he puts your what do you call it? The dupatta around your eyes. Now you can't see.
Correct, yeah.
That's one. And then
Okay.
your son comes and he pushes you. Or she pushes you. That's a different act. So do you not see that there's a difference?
No, I do understand there is a difference, but I was wondering if your identity is hidden, eventually into the ocean of material
Yeah,
existence.
but
And
who's doing that? That's Maya.
Maya. Yes,
I'm not
Prabhuji.
sure I understand your question then.
No, I've understood it's like very close difference between the two in a
They're
way.
connected, yes. They're the two functions of same potency.
Okay, Prabhuji, yes.
Okay?
Okay, got it, Prabhuji. No worries.
Okay, all right. Okay, next paragraph.
I can read the next paragraph.
Please go ahead.
Go ahead, Mataji.
Oh, thank you. Why the Devi Maya or illusory energy of philosophers is also explained in the Bhagavad Gita by the use of the words asuram bhavam ashrita, which refer to a person who does not agree to the existence of the Lord. The Mayavadis, who are not in agreement with the existence of the Lord, can be classified in two groups, exemplified by the personalist Shankarites of Varanasi and the Buddhists of Saranath. Both are Mayavadis, and Krishna takes away their knowledge due to their atheistic philosophies. Neither group agrees to accept the existence of a personal God. The Buddhist philosophers clearly deny both the soul and God, and although the Shankarites do not openly deny God, they say that the Absolute is Nirakar, or formless. Thus, both the Buddhists and the Shankarites are Avishuddha Buddhaya, or imperfect and unclean in their knowledge and intelligence.
Right. Thank you. So, very interesting question. It's called Davi Maya. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 7:14, Davi hi esha gunamai, Maya duratya. So it's a Davi Shakti. Davi Shakti is expect, something that's very favorable to Krishna. Yet it is taking one away from Krishna. But we should understand that that is the order of Krishna. So she is very favorable to Krishna by keeping away those who are unfavorable to Krishna away from Krishna. Is that point clear?
Very clear, Prabhuji.
Okay, good. So that's David, that's what it's called David. So now it's saying, why is taking away the knowledge of Mayavadi philosophers? And it says, the Prabhupada is saying in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, same verse that we were talking about before, is the word asuram bhavam ashrita. Asur is a person who does not agree that God exists. Now, Prabhupada now talks about two types of people, Mayavadis and Buddhists. So Mayavadis or Shankarites, they say God has no form. And Buddhists say God doesn't exist. So Buddhists are real atheists. The impersonalists of Mayavadis at least say, no, there's a God. He just doesn't have a form, which also is foolish. So therefore they're both condemned by Lord Chaitanya in what is describing to Prakashananda Saraswati. And basically the purport is saying, or the verse is saying, they have imperfect or unclean knowledge and intelligence. Avishuddha Buddhaya. Okay, any questions or the next paragraph? Okay, all right, let's move to the next one. We won't spend a lot of time on this one, but just let's read it.
Shall I read, Prabhuji?
Please go ahead, yeah, sure.
The most prominent Mayavadi scholar, Sadananda Yogendra, has written a book called Vedant Sara, in which he expounds the philosophy of Shankaracharya, and all the followers of Sankara's philosophy attribute great importance to his statements. In this Vedant Sara, Sadananda Yogendra defines Brahman as Sat Chit Anand, combined with knowledge and without duality, and he defines ignorance, jada, as knowledge distinct from that of Sat and Asat. This is almost inconceivable, but it is a product of the three material qualities. Thus, he considers anything other than pure knowledge to be material. The center of the ignorance is considered to be sometimes all-pervading and sometimes individual. Thus, according to his opinion, both the all-pervading Vishnu and the individual living entities are products of ignorance.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, it's clear. We're not going to spend too much time on this because it's really useless. Okay. Next paragraph further describes what he's saying. Somebody read it, please.
May I, Prabhu?
Please go ahead. Yeah.
In simple language, it is the opinion of Sadananda Yogendra that since everything is nirakara, formless, the conception of Vishnu and the conception of the individual soul are both products of ignorance. He also explains that the Vishuddha Sattva conception of the Vaishnavas is nothing but pradhana, or the chief principle of creation. He maintains that when all pervading knowledge is contaminated by the Vishuddha Sattva, which consists of a transformation of the quality of goodness, there arises the conception of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the omnipotent, omniscient, supreme ruler, the Supersoul, the cause of all causes, the Supreme Ishvara, etc. According to Sadananda Yogendra, because Ishvara, the Supreme Lord, is the reservoir of all ignorance, he may be called Sarvajna or omniscient. But one who denies the existence of the omnipotent Supreme Personality of Godhead is more than Ishvara or the Lord. His conclusion, therefore, is that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Ishvara, is a transformation of material ignorance, and that of the living entity is covered by ignorance. Thus, he describes both collective and individual existence in darkness. According to Mayavadi philosophers, the Vaishnava conception of the Lord as a Supreme Personality of Godhead and of the Jiva or individual soul as his eternal servant is a manifestation of ignorance. If we accept the judgment of Lord Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, however, the Mayavadis are to be considered Maya Apaharta Jnana, or bereft of all knowledge, because they do not recognize the existence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or they claim that his existence is a product of the material conception, Maya. These are characteristics of asuras or demons.
Right. So again, very clear what they talk is nonsense. They can say that Vishuddha Sattva is a transformation of mode of goodness. I mean, just absolute nonsense. That the Lord himself is a transformation of, excuse me, this transformation of goodness, material goodness, that is nonsense. Jiva is always in ignorance, utter nonsense. I mean, you just go on and on. So that's why Lord Chaitanya says, just don't bother with them. We're reading it because in the purport, but we're not going to discuss too much about this. Next paragraph, please.
Shall I read, Prabhuji?
Please go ahead.
Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in his discourses with the Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, said, Jivere Nishtar Lagi Sutra Kaila Vyas Mayavadi Bhasya Sunile Haya Sarvanash.
Yes.
It is mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita Lila, 6th chapter, 169th verse. Vyasadeva composed the Vedanta Sutra to deliver the conditioned souls from this material world, but Shankaracharya, by presenting the Vedanta Sutra in his own way, has clearly done a great disservice to human society. For one who follows his Mayavad philosophy is doomed. In the Vedanta Sutra, devotional service is clearly indicated, but the Mayavadi philosophers refuse to accept the spiritual body of the Supreme Absolute Person and refuse to accept that the living entity has an individual, separate, individual existence separate from that of the Supreme Lord. Thus, they have created atheistic havoc all over the world, for such a conclusion is against the very nature of the transcendental process of pure devotional service. The Mayavadi philosophers' unrealizable ambition to become one with the Supreme through denying the existence of the personality of the Godhead results in the most calamitous misrepresentation of spiritual knowledge. And one who follows this philosophy is doomed to remain perpetually in this material world. Therefore, they are called Avishuddha Buddhayai, or unclean in knowledge. Because they are unclean in knowledge, all their austerities and penances end in frustration. Thus, although they may be honored at first as very learned scholars, ultimately they descend to physical activities of politics, social, work, etc. Instead of becoming one with the Supreme Lord, they again become one with these material activities. Shall I? Okay, I'll continue. This is explained by Srimad Bhagavatam. Aruhaya krichena paramam padam tataha patantai adoho anadrita yushmad anugrahayaha. In actuality, the Mayavadi philosophers very strictly follow the austerities and penances of spiritual life, and in this way, they are elevated to the impersonal Brahman platform. But due to their negligence of the lotus feet of the Lord, they again fall down to the material existence.
Yeah. So you can see why I don't want to spend too much time with this. All so much nonsense, so exactly opposite of what we believe and what Bhagavad Gita says, or Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, and what the spiritual scriptures like the Srimad Bhagavatam say, totally opposite. So, and then the irony is being explained in the last paragraph. It says, in actuality, the Mayavadi philosophers very strictly follow the austerities and penances of spiritual life. I mean, they do more than we can ever do. And in this way are elevated to the impersonal Brahman platform. So they do merge in the Brahman effulgence, but due to the negligence of the lotus feet of the Lord, they again fall down. So it's said that unless you have shelter of a higher authority, you will fall down. And that's what happens to them because they have no shelter. They're there, sure, they made it because of the austerities and penances. But now what? No shelter there, so therefore they fall down to the material existence again. Okay? Let's go to the next paragraph. Next verse, 115. प्राकृत करिया माने विष्णु कलेवर विष्णु निंदा आर नाही इहार ऊपर. Sorry. Translation. One who considers the transcendental body of Lord Vishnu to be made of material nature is the greatest offender at the lotus feet of the Lord. There is no greater blasphemy against the Supreme Personality of God. Actually, there's a very wonderful pastime of Lord Chaitanya. One of his associates, and if I'm not mistaken, is Murari Gupta, but it could be Mukunda, but I think it's Murari Gupta. Anyway, he started to associate with Mayavadis. So one time when Lord Chaitanya was giving darshan to all the devotees, he refused entry to Murari Gupta. So associates of Lord Chaitanya were very surprised and shocked. They said, why is such a wonderful devotee? Lord Chaitanya said, no, he has been associating with Mayavadis. And then he said, when a Mayavadi takes my name, I feel as if he's taken a sword, is cutting my body limb by limb by limb. That's how painful it is to hear Mayavadi even take my name. So you talk about blasphemy. This is how blasphemous Mayavadis are, because they're claiming that the Lord's body is made of material nature. So let's understand that better in the purport.
Prabhuji, may I ask a question here?
Of course you can, of course you can. Yeah.
So if Mayavad is such a to be like dooming philosophy, then why was it even propagated by Sri Shankaracharya, who was actually a incarnation of Shiva, who is Krishna? Who's a Vaishnavite?
So we will discuss that later because it's going to come. One of the verses will tell you that. But short answer is that because Lord Buddha had come and denied the authority of the Vedas and the God. So it was time to re-establish the authority of the Vedas. And so Lord Chaitanya, Lord Vishnu told Lord Shankar, Lord Shiva, that you go and do this at least to establish the authorities of the Vedas. But there will be other issues that come, we will take care of them. But right now, your task or your assignment is to bring them from total atheism to some degree of theism. Because complete jump into bhakti will not work. So to go by stages. So this was an intermediate stage that the Lord said you'll do it. So that's why he did it. But again, he'll explain in much more detail later on in the verses that we're going to cover.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Hare
Saraswati Mataji, welcome. Yeah, raising your hand.
Sorry, a little late.
No worries. No worries, Mataji.
Pranams to all. Yeah, so just a quick comment. It was actually Mukunda Dutt that
Okay,
was
yeah, I understand.
associated.
Thank you.
Yes, well, I mean, sometimes I feel that there's such a danger to try and study more and more this Mayavad. Well, we're not studying it in detail because sometimes for some people it might start making sense. So you almost feel like I don't want to read it. But for me, I just can't wrap my mind around how anybody in their right mind would want to extinguish their individuality, because if you think about it, even in material existence, we still want to experience all kinds of bliss and have these relationships. I know we don't get any bliss from these temporary relationships, but we all want to feel everything to the hilt. So to me, I can't wrap my mind around how anybody would not want to be an individual soul and want to experience things. Of course, we want to experience spiritual ecstasy and spiritual emotions, but that just makes no sense to me. And where it's said, how the Lord said that because they neglect serving the devotional, because they neglect serving the lotus feet of the Lord, they fall down to material existence. And I was reading that they come down in a shower of rain and start the material evolutionary process as plants, like trees. And I thought, oh, how horrible! They've reached all this austerity and all just to become a plant again and start from scratch this evolutionary material process. What a waste. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. So actually, just to support your point, as we read here, Krishna basically answers the question, how can anybody become a Mayavadi? And he uses two terms for them: Maya aparhet jnana. Those people whose knowledge has been stolen by Maya. And second quality, ashram bhavam ashrita. Those who taken shelter of the ashram bhav, which is denying the existence of God. They're the two types of people who become Mayavadis. So Krishna has answered your question.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Sure, you're welcome.
Just on the same continuing topic, just wanted to confirm, deny the authority of the Vedas by Buddha is because of the animal sacrifices mentioned in the Vedas, correct?
Correct.
Yes. Okay, Prabhuji, thanks.
Okay. All right. So let's read 115.
I will read, Prabhuji.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Okay. So Sri Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami explains the variegated personal features of the Absolute Truth is the Vishnu Tattva, and that the material energy which creates this cosmic manifestation is the energy of Lord Vishnu. The creative force is merely the energy of the Lord. But the foolish conclude that because the Lord has distributed himself in an impersonal form, he has no separate existence. The impersonal Brahman, however, cannot possess energies, nor do the Vedic literature state that Maya, the illusory energy, is covered by another Maya. There are hundreds and thousands of references, however, to Vishnu Maya, Parasya Shakti, or the energy of Lord Vishnu. In the Bhagavad Gita 7.14, Krishna refers to Maya, Mama Maya, my energy. Maya is controlled by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is not that he is covered by Maya. Therefore, Lord Vishnu cannot be product of the material energy. In the beginning of the Vedanta Sutra, it is said, Jalmadi Asya Yata, indicating that the material energy is also an emanation of the Supreme Brahman. How then could he be covered by material energy? If that were possible, material energy would be greater than the Supreme Brahman. Even these simple arguments, however, cannot be understood by the Mayavadi philosopher, and therefore the term Maya Aparata Jnana, which is applied to them in the Bhagavad Gita, is extremely appropriate. Anyone who thinks that Lord Vishnu is the product of the material energy, as explained by Sadananda Yogendra, should immediately be understood to be insane, for this knowledge has been stolen by the illusory energy. Hare Krishna, thank you.
Hare Krishna. I'm laughing because Prabhupada used such direct words. He's insane. He's a rascal. He's Maya Pratyana. I mean, and a very wonderful logic is being given here. How can energy of a person can control the person? Right? You have the energetic and you have the energy. So, yes, it is true that there exists eternally, so it's hard to understand who comes first. But his logical mind says, this person there, and then he manifests his energies. I'm not covered by my own energy. Nobody's covered by their own energy. We're covered by somebody else's energy, but not my own. Right? So Krishna cannot be covered by his own Maya. That Maya works on other people. Now, Yoga Maya works on Krishna because Krishna has empowered that internal potency to work on him, and that allows him to do his pastimes, which is fine, but not external potency, which is not even allowed to come near him. And that is why we read about the creation where Krishna doesn't go near Maya, simply glances over her. She could be millions of miles away, simply glancing at to start the process of creation. So Maya therefore cannot touch Krishna, that cannot come near Krishna, and of course, no question of controlling Krishna. Anybody who thinks that's made of material. Krishna has another word for them in 745 Bhagavad Gita. He says, Mudho nam janati. Namam janati. Mudha, fool, rascal. They talk like that. Here Prabhupada used the word insane. You have to be pagal to be talking like that. Okay, next paragraph. Any volunteers?
I can read, Prabhuji.
Please go ahead.
Lord Vishnu cannot be placed within the category of the demigods. Those who are actually bewildered by the Mayavad philosophy and are still in the darkness of ignorance consider Lord Vishnu to be a demigod. In defiance of the Rig Vedic mantra, Om Tad Vishnu Paramam Padam, Vishnu is always in a superior position. This mantra is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, Matta Parataram Nanyat. There is no truth superior to Lord Krishna or Vishnu. Thus, only those whose knowledge has been bewildered consider Lord Vishnu to be a demigod and therefore suggest that one may worship either Lord Vishnu, the goddess Kali, Durga, or whomever one likes and achieve the same result. This is an ignorant conclusion that is not accepted in the Bhagavad Gita 9.25, which distinctly says, Yanti Deva Vrata Devan, Yanti Madhyajino Apimam. The worshippers of the demigods will be promoted to the respective planets of the demigods, but devotees of the Supreme Lord will go back home, back to Godhead. Lord Krishna explains very clearly in the Bhagavad Gita 7.14 that his material energy is very difficult to overcome. Devi hi esha gunamayi mama maya duratyaya. Maya's influence is so strong that even learned scholars and spiritualists are also covered by Maya and think themselves to be as good as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Actually, however, to free oneself from the influence of Maya, one must surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as Krishna also states in Bhagavad Gita 7.14, Mam eva ye prapadyante mayam etam tarantite. It is to be concluded, therefore, that Lord Vishnu does not belong to this material creation, but to the spiritual world. To misconceive Lord Vishnu to have a material body or to equate him with the demigods is the most offensive blasphemy against Lord Vishnu, and offenders against the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu cannot advance in spiritual knowledge. They are called Maya Apharita Jnana, or those whose knowledge has been stolen by the influence of illusion. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, thank you. So, to call Lord Vishnu a demigod is the second offense against the holy name. Anybody remember the second offense against the holy name?
To consider some demigods like Shiva and Lord Brahma to be equal to or independent of Lord Vishnu.
Right. So that's second offense. This is very similar to that. Anybody calling Vishnu as a demigod is putting him on the same level as Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, etc. So huge offense. But again, those who are still in the darkness of ignorance, Mayavad, they may think like that. Now there's a verse being quoted from Rig Veda, Om Tat Vishnu Paramapadam. Who recognizes that verse and why? You should all actually recognize that verse. You should. If not, it is something you're not doing every day. Anybody?
Tell us, Prabhuji. I want to know what we are not doing every day.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I want to know, what you're not doing every day. Nobody knows? I know you know. My wife's talking from behind, she knows. Okay. Does everybody do Achman?
Yeah.
Yes, Prabhu.
I
Yes.
don't, Prabhuji, I don't.
You should. And what do you say at the end of the Achman? That's this verse. If you don't have it, you should all have to go to your temple and get it. And otherwise, I can send it to you. So that's the verse you should have. You should chant after your Achman every day, 3 times a day.
Prabhu, can you please send that?
Yeah, I will.
Thank you.
I'll send it to everybody. You should all memorize and say it after the Achman. Like it's a must. It's not a choice. I'm surprised that you don't know. No, in Toronto temple is written, not other temples. Okay, anyway, so that's where it's coming from. And I will send it to everybody. So please memorize, and after Achman, you chant this mantra. Anyway, I just off topic, but I just want to make sure that everybody's. Yeah. And that verse basically saying that all the knowledgeable people take shelter of Lord Vishnu. He has the most superior position. Okay, which is equivalent to saying, Krishna's Bhagavad Gita, Matta Patam Nandat, Pichitas Dhananjana, that there's no truth superior to me. Okay, so again, only those whose knowledge has been bewildered by Maya, they would think of Vishnu as a demigod, or that we should worship somebody other than Vishnu, like Kali or Durga or whatever. Okay, very, very important. And then again, Prabhupada is quoting, what happens if you serve demigods? He says, Yanti Devrata Devan. Those who worship demigods, they go to the planet of demigods. Now, where's the planet of demigods? Spiritual world or material world?
Material world.
Material world.
So staying in the material world. Pitra Yanti Pitravata. If you worship the Pitras, you go to Pitralok. That's also material world. But what happens to the people who worship me? Yanti Madhyajinopima. Those who worship me, they come to my abode. And where is that? The spiritual world or material world?
Spiritual.
There you go. So that's the choice. So those who are intelligent, Sumedhisa, they worship the Lord, Lord Krishna, Lord Vishnu. Those whose knowledge has been stolen by Maya, they worship demigods or the Pitras, etc. Okay? All right. And then point being made is that Maya is so strong that even the PhDs, etc., or the big transcendentalists, spiritualists, they fall in its influence, and they cannot get out until they surrender to Krishna. So the 3 gunas are compared to 3 ropes that have bound us all together tightly. We cannot escape. Only when there's somebody who's not taught, or rather tied with the ropes, can free us up. That's the spiritual master or the Lord himself. So Lord in 7:14 is saying, Mamev Jaya Prapadante. Only those who surrender to me, Maya etantarate. They can be freed from Maya, because Krishna will order Maya to let us go. So therefore, we cannot say Vishnu belongs to the material creation. Rather, he comes from the material spiritual world. He creates the spiritual world, for that matter. So anyway, and anybody who offends the lotus feet of the Lord by calling him a demigod or material is an offender, is a blasphemer, and therefore is known as Maya aparhat jnana. Person whose knowledge has been stolen by Maya.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Can I ask a question?
If you want.
So, people who have no knowledge, what about that? They will also
Okay.
call the Mayavadis, or
No,
I mean, people
no,
usually don't offend
no,
Krishna.
no, just because you don't know anything doesn't mean you're Mayavadi.
Yeah, people don't know. Most even Hindus, they think that Vishnu is the supreme, and then Krishna comes from Vishnu.
Yeah, they are different thought processes and all that.
But that's not offense, is it?
No, that's not an offense. No.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Gayatri?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. In the Gita, where Krishna says, "All knowledge comes from me, and forgetfulness also comes from me." But then He's also the most merciful. So I'm just thinking, like I feel kind of sad for these people, because they're in like there's no salvation for them. But that forgetfulness and that lack of knowledge is also being given to them by Krishna too. And they don't receive Krishna's mercy. Is it because of what they're doing? Like they don't want Krishna's mercy? Like, what is the cause of this sad situation?
Krishna can shower his mercy, but unless you extend your hand and take it, what can he do? It's like the rain. The clouds don't distinguish between a desert and ocean. They're giving to both. One needs it, one doesn't need it. The same with Krishna's mercy is on everybody. But if you refuse to take it, what can you do? It's like there is saying that you can take a horse to the water, but you cannot make him drink it. So you have to want that mercy. If you don't want it, he can get really bored. He can come as incarnation, he can come as scriptures, he can come as devotees, he can come as acharya, and try and try and try and he come as achavigraha. If you don't want any of that, what can you do? It's not going to force you to serve him. He's going to incent you, he's going to inspire you, he's going to provide the environment for you. But at some point in time, you have to take it.
So it's a choice that they're making, even though Krishna is giving them multiple.
Exactly right.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Shalini Mataji?
So actually, Prabhuji, on the same lines as Gayatri Mataji's question, isn't it interesting that non-devotees or the Mayavadis consider the devotees as stupid or not intelligent enough, and the devotees think that the other group of people, non-devotees and Mayavadis, are actually muras. So each party thinks, I know I am the most intelligent one, and the other one doesn't know anything.
Right.
They are muras, whether it's false ego or it's devotion.
So Mataji, in popular language, Hindi, when somebody wants to call another man a fool, what's the word they use? What animal's name do they use?
Gadha?
Gadha, donkey.
Yeah.
Right? When the donkeys fight, what word do they use to call other donkey a fool? What's the answer?
I don't know.
You are man.
Oh.
What a man. So everything is relative.
Yeah.
Like in their words, in their world, humans are fools. In our world, donkeys are fools. There's another story, a true story. There was a psychologist, very famous, actually father of psychology, by the name of Pavlov, a Russian psychologist. He used to do experiment on conditioning. And so he was trying to train two mice to ring a bell. That was a total experiment. And his method was to reward them when they do the right behavior and not reward them when they did the wrong behavior. So the reward was a piece of cheese. She put them in a maze and they would run here and there. Every time they, by accident, rang the bell that he put there, he'll give them cheese. So after many, many times, even the mice figured it out that, when they ring the bell, they get the mice and the cheese. So then Pavlov called all the other famous psychologists of the time and said, look, here's my experiment of conditioning. I showed the experiment. He says, I have finally conditioned to the mice to ring the bell when they want cheese. And they all applauded. They're wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And he got big name in the journals and all that. In the meantime, the two mice were talking. And one mouse said to the other mouse, it took us 6 months, but finally we trained this man to give us cheese when we ring the bell. So, Mataji, this is all perspective.
Yeah.
Right? So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Okay. All right. Let's move on. Okay. Next paragraph? Or actually next verse, actually. Right? Next verse or next paragraph? Sorry.
Next verse.
Okay. All right. (116) ईश्वर तत्व जहाँ ज्वलित ज्वलन जीवेर स्वरूप जैसे स्फुलिंगेर कण. The Lord is like a great blazing fire, and living entities are like small sparks of that fire. I love that. The Lord is like a great blazing fire, and the living entities are like small sparks of that fire. Who has done a bonfire or a fire outside the house, or even a fireplace? Anybody? Just say yes or no.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes,
So then you know what they're talking about. Let's read the purport.
I can read, Prabhu.
Please go ahead.
All the sparks and a big fire are both fire, and both have the power to burn. The burning power of the fire and that of the spark are not the same. Why should one artificially try to become like a big fire, although by constitution he is like a small spark? It is due to ignorance. One should therefore understand that neither the Supreme Personality of Godhead nor the small spark-like living entities have anything to do with matter. But when the spiritual spark comes in contact with the material world, his fiery quality is extinguished. That is the position of the conditioned souls. Because they are in touch with the material world, their spiritual quality is almost dead. But because these spiritual sparks are Krishna's parts and parcels, as the Lord states in Bhagavad Gita, Mamavansha, they can revive the original position by getting free from the material contact. This is pure philosophical understanding. In the Bhagavad Gita, the spiritual sparks are declared to be Sanatan, eternal. Therefore, the material energy, Maya, cannot affect their constitutional position.
Right. So let's take that example a little bit further. So the reason I asked you who has seen a big fire is sparks. So let's talk about your observation of the sparks. So what happens to those sparks?
It dies down very soon.
I'm sorry?
It dies very soon.
Where? Where does it die?
Away from the fire.
So when it falls away from the fire, it dies very soon. But not every spark falls away from the fire, does it?
No.
No, some fall back in the fire.
Yes.
What happens to their effulgence?
They retain it.
Yeah, they retain it. Don't be so doubtful. Yeah, they retain it.
I was about to say merge, but I didn't want to use that word.
Oh, I see. Okay, good enough. So the retained means it's like the equivalent is the Nitya Siddha Bhaktas, the eternally liberated devotees who never left Yama. Right?
Yes.
So that's like the sparks falling back in the fire. Now spark and fire fall outside the fire. So what are the possible places where the spark and fire fall?
It can
A
fall in
bundle of hay, Prabhuji.
Sorry?
A bundle of hay.
Of what?
A bundle of hay, a grass.
Hay. Oh, I see. Grass. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's one place. Yeah. Where else?
it can fall on the ground, Prabhu.
Ground, yeah, ground. Ground where the grass is or the hay is. Where else?
It can stay in the air.
No, it cannot stay in the air.
No.
Yeah, on the ash, Prabhuji.
Water.
Ash.
Ash. Okay, same thing as ground. Okay.
Yeah.
So first of the ground is ash there or hay there, or grass there. Where else can it fall?
Water.
Water, exactly. So the spark that falls in the water, what happens to it?
Turns into ash.
Really?
Um,
Really? When the spark falls in the water, it turns into ash?
Whatever is the unburned particle
Dissolve.
that remains.
Yeah, unburned, yes, but the spark itself is finished, just extinguished, finished,
Extinguished.
right? So think of that like ignorance, Mayavad, all those kind of atheists, no spark left. Then that falls on the ground, it could fall on the hay or the grass or whatever, it can get extinguished or it can burn more, right? So most of us have fallen like the spark falling on the ground, and we have an opportunity to revive that spark. If we don't revive it, it'll eventually extinguish. So if we do the Maya Pratyana route or Ashram Bhava Master route or other ignorance route, that's what happens. But otherwise, given the right association, the mercy of the devotees, mercy of the Lord, we can revive the spark and it will turn to spark fire again. Grass can burn, trees can burn, hay can burn, it becomes big fire again. Right? So that's who we are. That's why this analogy is very, very appropriate. Any of those three things can happen. Okay. So but to artificially become like a big fire is ignorance. Therefore, you should understand that neither the Lord nor the living entity has anything to do with the matter. But when it comes in contact with the material world, the fiery quality is extinguished. Extinguished on the ground or in the water. One immediately and like forever, and one shall take some time and has the possibility of revival. And that's our position. It's almost dead, but can be revived. Okay, it says here, they can revive the original position by getting free from material contact. That is the pure philosophical understanding, right? Because we're Sanatan, we can get it back. Okay, now, the next paragraph, very interesting paragraph. Go ahead.
Prabhu, I'll read.
Please go ahead, yeah.
Someone may argue why is there a need to create the spiritual sparks? The answer can be given in this way. Since the absolute personality of Godhead is omnipotent, he has both unlimited and limited potencies. This is the meaning of omnipotent. To be omnipotent, he must have not only unlimited potency, but limited potencies also. Thus, to exhibit his omnipotency, he displays both. The living entities are endowed with the limited potency, although they are part of the Lord. The Lord displays the spiritual world by his unlimited potencies, whereas by his limited potencies, the material world is displayed. In the Bhagavad Gita 7.5, the Lord says, Apareyam mitastva anyam prakritim vidime param jiva bhutam mahabaho yayedam dharyate jagat. Besides these inferior energies, O mighty armed Arjun, there is another superior energy of mind, which comprises all living entities who are exploiting the resources of this material inferior nature. The Jeev Bhuta, the living entities, control this material world with their limited potential. Generally, people are bewildered by the activities of scientists and technologists. Due to Maya, they think that there is no need of God and that they can do everything and anything. But actually, they cannot. Since this cosmic manifestation is limited, their existence is also limited. Everything in this material world is limited, and for this reason, there is creation, sustenance, and dissolution. However, in the world of unlimited energy, the spiritual world, there is neither creation nor destruction.
Right.
Should I come?
So basically, again, the point being made very wonderfully is that the reason of sparks is that the Lord is omnipotent, therefore has to have the greatest potency and limited potency. Some other place says also that he is the greatest and is the smallest. So therefore, he has to create what's the smallest, that's us, to cover the entire range of spectrum. Otherwise, he'll become limited in some way. He's great, but not small. He's strong, but not weak. So it's everything. There's nothing left. Covers the entire range of the spectrum. Okay. And yeah, that's it. Let's read the next paragraph.
Yeah, Prabhu. If the personality of God, I'll continue for that.
Let somebody else do it. There's the volunteer. If there's no volunteer, you can do it.
Shall I read, Prabhuji?
Sure, go ahead.
If the personality of Godhead did not possess both limited and unlimited energies, he could not be called omnipotent. Anor Anyan Mahato Mahayan. The Lord is smaller than the smallest and greater than the greatest. He is smaller than the smallest in the form of a living entities and the greater than the greatest in the form of Krishna. If there were no one to control, there would be no meaning to the conception of Supreme Controller Ishvara. Just as there is no meaning to a king without his subjects, if all the subjects became king, there would be no distinction between the king and an ordinary citizen. Thus, for the Lord to be the supreme controller, there must be a creation to control. The basic principle for the existence of the living entities is called Chit Vilasa, or spiritual player. The omnipotent Lord displays his player potency as the living entities. The Lord is described in Vedanta Sutra 1112 as Anandamayo Vyasat. He is by nature the reservoir of all players, and because he wants to enjoy player, there must be energies to give him player or supply him the impetus for player. This is the perfect philosophical understanding of the absolute truth.
So this is further explanation of why God created us. He's a supreme enjoyer, but he has something to enjoy, and that's us. So we are the enjoyed, he's the enjoyer. Similarly, he's a supreme controller, but he needs something to control, that's us. So we are the controlled, he's the controller. So anyway, the whole explanation is being given simply to move the point why he created us. Okay, so now it's saying the living entities and the Lord, big fire and the spark. Okay, so we'll stop here unless there are any questions.
Prabhuji, can I say the Rigveda shlok?
I'm sorry?
The Achman shlok? Can I say the Rigveda shlok, Prabhu?
Sure, say it.
Om Tad Vishnu Paramam Padam Tada Pashyanti Sureya Deviva Chakshuratam Viprasa Vipanyavo Jagrazamsa Visamandite Vishnu Yat Paramam Padam.
Yes, thank you, Mataji. So that's the verse I was referring to. So everybody, I said it, so but everybody now after you do Achman, you should read that verse. Thank you, Mataji. Pallavi, Mataji?
Yes, Prabhuji, could you please, I have a doubt, if you could please shed a little light on that.
Sure.
The sentence, he's smaller than the smallest in the form of the living entities. How do we understand that?
No, so basically saying when he expands as a living entity, we are very small, 1/10,000th the size of the hair. So saying that's very, very small. So I don't know if that's the question.
Yeah, I mean, as a soul, right? Like Jivatma.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Sure. Anybody else?
Prabhuji, can you please explain the meaning of duality once?
Duality? Duality is like, you have high and low, you have spiritual and material, you have fast and slow, and you have good and bad. Those are the dualities of the material world. The duality of the material do not exist in the spiritual world. So that's because it's our absolute platform in the spiritual world. There's no better and worse. There's no higher or lower in the spiritual world.
The differences, Prabhu.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripasindubhyo cha patitanam pavanebhyo. Thank you all.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Next week is Nityanand
Gaur Purnima.
Chaitanya, not Chaitanya, Gaur Purnima. So there'll be program, I'm sure, every temple. So we won't have the class. Encourage everybody to go to the temple and celebrate the appearance of Lord Chaitanya. So we'll
Thank
be
you, Prabhuji.
Krishna.
Thank you again.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank
Hare
you.
Krishna.
Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Dandavat pranam.
Dandavat pranam. Jai Shri Prabhupada.